Dr. Singh, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move to the first slide next. Yes, I think you are all familiar with the major global challenges. First is the feeding the growing population, which we are all aware. Poverty is still very prevalent in many countries. So alleviating poverty is a big challenge. We have been damaging environment for a number of years, and I don't think we have slowed down yet. So protecting the environment is another big challenge. And now climate is giving us a very big challenge as it is changing. So responding to that climate change to meet the needs of the growing population is another challenge. In spite of all the progress, we still have roughly 700 million people who are undernourished, which is roughly 1 in 11. And roughly half of these people belong to Asia, where my seminar is concentrated. Although Africa has a larger percentage of undernourished, but their share of population is small because half the population of the world is more than half actually is in Asia. Next. This gives you the idea of population. I think the circle represents the size of population. You can see China and India, two big circles. And then US right below that in green. The red, all the red circles are in Asia. So you can see how much Asia represents. So the major challenges we are talking about for feeding the big population, actually major challenges Asia. But luckily Asia has taken care of most of it. I think the growing problem will be mostly in Africa. And countries in Africa are growing much faster. Nigeria, Ethiopia, Egypt, Democratic Republic of Congo, a number of these countries. So this gives you an idea. I think the size of the circles give you idea of challenge to feed the population. Next one. Yeah, if you look at for Asia as such, the East Asia, which China is the major country, and with that, it includes the countries in Southeast Asia, ASEAN. Their population is not increasing as fast as the increase of South Asia. So you can see these proportions that you look at from East Asia, where China is the major country, grows from 2.1 billion people to 2.17, while South Asia, where India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Maldives, these countries grows to 2.21, very significant increase, even up to 250, which we have. So the developing Asia is still is over 50% of the population, and it will maintain more or less, maybe slightly reduced to 46% or so as projected for 2050. Out of the world population projected to be 9.5 billion. So the Asia will continue to have the feeding the large population as a major challenge. Next. Yes. So if you look at the gross national income of the East Asia, where, as I said, China is the major country, it's close to $7,000 per capita. In South Asia, with India, with the biggest country, is about $2,000, and worldwide average is about $11,000. Okay, so you see such a variation. But important thing is to look at how this GDP is made up of. If you look at the East Asia, where China is major country, industry counts for 44%. Manufacturing alone, industry includes mining also. So manufacturing accounts for 30%, While you look for South Asia, where India is a major country, is only 14%. And even worldwide is only 16%. So that's why China is called the factory of the world, with 30% in manufacturing. No other country had that level of manufacturing, supplying products. So I can go to the next one. Okay, now here it gives a breakdown of number of countries, if anybody is interested, for 3 sectors. So if I look at China, 10% comes from agriculture, 44% comes from industry, and services only 46%. And if you look at India, which is another second biggest country there, 18% roughly from agriculture, only 25% from industry, and services 57%. But if you look at the population part, so 50% of people in agriculture in India are producing only 18% of GDP, while the other 50% will be producing rest of it. Okay, so you look at, there is such a low income from the agriculture sector. I think this similar pattern applies everywhere, and I think the next slide will explain you. Next one. Yeah, here you see that as the GDP grows, the economy grows, the share in agriculture, employment in agriculture goes down. And the GDP or per capita also grows with the economy. And so you can see, starting from Bangladesh, Myanmar, Cambodia, which are very high employment, all these countries, including Pakistan, are almost up to India, more than 50% or around 50% in agriculture sector, and their per capita incomes below $2,000. Okay, and when you go to the developed countries, you go to UK, France, Germany, Japan, US, all these, and you see their per capita income $50,000 and around, and employment only 1 to 3%. So this is, later on we'll come to, this is the major contribution of mechanization, that you are able to produce much more quantity of agriculture produce with a very small number of people. Next. Yeah, now I showed you the economy, but here is very interesting slide which has just come out from World Bank, that how the shifts are taking place in the economies. If you look at 1992, China just entered at the 10th place in the size of the economy. And US, of course, has been a leader for many years. And Japan used to be the second largest economy. Then Germany, France, Italy, UK, Spain, Canada, and Russia. In next 16 years, 15, 16 years, you see a major change. China from 10th place jumps to 3rd place. Japan maintains that, but, and there is a, other countries you stay more or less the same order. But if you look at now, what is projected after 3 years or so, India is expected to take the 3rd place, and China is expected to move to 1st place. Well, US is going to give a tough competition, but I think that with major manufacturing base in China and increasing trade worldwide, I think China, by World Bank, the projection is by World Bank, will take the 1st place. And then India becomes the 3rd place, and Japan moves down to 4th, and like that. So the big countries, as we saw in the population chart, China, India, US, they are going to occupy respective positions even in economy, which is a healthy sign in a way that the size of economy and size of population to be fed or taken care are moving in that direction. It will take a long time, but I think that if you look at the stability in the worldwide economies, I think it will move into that direction. Next. Yeah. So as the income grows, you find there is a major change in the food habits, improvement in the nutrition. If you look at 1997 and 1970, the cereals in Asia were occupying roughly 40% share, which has been reduced to 24%. And that 16% has been taken up by livestock, fruits and vegetables in the diet. So if you see, the livestock, which was only 15% in 1970, has gone up to 28% in 2010. Similarly, fruits and vegetables accounted for 18% and now increased to 27% by 2010. And this trend is continuing. So I think fruits and vegetables is very close to 29 to 30% now. So this trend is very healthy for nutrition, for diet, and same way the livestock. So because when people's income increases, they have more money, they can spend more, and part of it definitely is spent on improving the diet. Next one. Yeah, now I come to mechanization. I think with that background, how does really mechanization progresses? This is the chart I made based on my teaching at AIT and learning from my students how the various operations, different operations are getting mechanized. So I classified all these operations into three categories. First category is requiring very high power, but requiring very low skill. Second category, power is variable from anywhere to anywhere, and skill you need higher, so medium skill required. The third category is power is not very important, but the skill is the most important part. And this skill now, I think now you can translate into intelligence. Now, so the first operations which got mechanized with high power and low skill were like grinding, like wheat flour making, rice milling, sugarcane crushing, water pumping, thrashing. These are all high power required operations and don't need too much of a skill and much setting. And these are the stationary operations. In mobile operations, land preparation, plowing, harrowing, all those things. And the transport, that's another requiring high power. So these are the first category of operations which get mechanized first. And this is true worldwide. There might be a slight variation, but this is a general trend. The second category of operations which require little extra skill are like grinding by size. If you want a precision in the size, that this should be the size of particles, cleaning, even grading, all these require little extra skill. And then in the mobile operations, seeding of grains, so seed drills, all of them, harvesting, these are the in mobile. In the last category, which require very high skill, grinding by quality. If you specify the quality exactly, will require much higher skill. Transplanting of rice, harvesting cotton, harvesting sugarcane, harvesting fruits and vegetables are very high skill because the product has to be, individual item has to be identified. In a cotton, you pick up an individual ball. In a fruit, you will pick up an individual fruit. In vegetables, you will be identifying that particular vegetable. So, and now what is happening in this high skill required operations is that the requirement of high intelligence is becoming artificial intelligence. So we are collecting a big data to feed that and use artificial intelligence to mechanize these operations. Next one. Okay, So what has happened in mechanization trend, what I showed you in the previous slide. So in South Asia, our mechanization processing, which I showed you, grinding and all that, station operation, irrigation, they were the first major operations mechanized. Okay. In the so draft animal power has really reduced very drastically. In India, it has really, it was in 1975 over 80 million draft animals, and which has come down to, I think, around 20 million or so now. And in Bangladesh, there was a big cyclone which killed most of the draft animals. So they moved to the two-wheel tractor, which is a power tiller, and most of the operations are done by that one. So now shift is from the draft animals to the mechanical power, whether a four-wheel tractor or a single axle power tiller. Next one. Yeah, here will give you an idea of how the numbers have moved. Now, these numbers have, I collected in 2013 from many participants from Asia, most of my students, and you see a big number jumps. You look at Bangladesh had only 5,000 tractors in 1990, increased to 60,000. India from 1.2 million to 5.4, and which is now over 8 million tractors now. Nepal, same way, Pakistan, same way, Sri Lanka. You see all these numbers increasing. Two-wheel tractors, which are power tillers, again jumping very rapidly, especially country like Bangladesh, from a 10,000 to 700,000, close to a million now. India, same way, Nepal and like that. But to me, the most important mechanization in Asia has been in irrigation. Lifting water from groundwater or from water bodies. And you can see in India from 12 million pumps in 1990 to 28 million that time. And I think it's definitely 30 million now. So, and even Bangladesh, you see the big number, Nepal, everywhere. And this is the operation which is still the highest priority for mechanization, irrigation, water lifting. Combined harvester numbers also have increased very rapidly over these years, but still there is a scope to go up. And accordingly, the power available, kilowatt per hectare, has increased in all the countries. And they are still continuing to grow because we are not fully mechanized yet. Next one. Yeah, this will give you a representation on power, how it has changed. You can see the bottom one is the human labor from agricultural workers. And it used to be quite significant in 1970s when I started putting. This data is, by the way, from CIAE Bhopal, Central Institute of Agricultural Engineering. Dr. C.R. Mehta compiled this chart. I don't have the latest one, but the trend continues the same way. You can see the biggest reduction is in the animal draft power, the second one, okay, in brown color, dark brown, come down to only 5% from 45%, used to be major power source. And this next one is the power from the tractors. You see from 5-6% is grown to almost 50% now in India. And share of the diesel power from diesel engines is holding on, but it is on a decline. Percentage basis, the number is not declined very much, but the percent share is going down. But the electric part is growing. And as a matter of fact, we expect it to grow even more in future as the electrification is growing and expanding in rural areas. Next one. Yeah, just give you an idea of India right now is the biggest producer of tractors. Almost 1/3 of the tractors produced worldwide are produced in India. And we produced almost over 900,000 tractors in 2020, in spite of pandemic, and exported about 100,000 tractors this last year. And we can say that the export is more than 10% in all the trends you can see. And Mahindra and Mahindra is really the largest producer of tractors worldwide. Close to 250,000 tractors a year, 250,000 tractors produced by Mahindra and Mahindra. Next one. Yeah. We always hear that the mechanization is not possible on small farms. All the numbers I'm giving to from Asia, they're all small farms. And you can say that 90% of the world, 500 million small farms are in Asia, less than 2 hectare farm. So, and the average size varies from 0.4 hectare to 4 hectare. And overall average for Asia is only about 1 hectare. This is a very crude estimate because estimate for every country is crude, but then taking for whole Asia is crude of crude estimates. So I think there's, but it gives you an idea. And 5 countries in the region, which account for most of the small farms, 70% of these, China has roughly 200 million of those. India about 100 million. And Bangladesh 24, Indonesia 22, and that's around 10 million. Okay. Now, important thing for mechanization is that the land tenure has to be secured. The land should be in the name of the farmer. In many countries, it is still a problem that the ownership of land is not very clear. So for anybody to make investment for future development, tenure has to be assured. Next. Okay. Now, we say that population will continue to increase, but in Asia, we don't have much land left to open for agriculture. So the growth has to come from increasing the yield and also by reducing the post-harvest losses. Our post-harvest losses are running very, very high. In grains, we estimate 6 to 10%. In fruits and vegetables, 25 to 30%. Depends where you are talking about, which fruit you are talking about. And it's interesting that in spite of big populations, we are complaining that there is a shortage of labor. And it's true almost all countries. So less labor is available for farming. Especially the young ones are not interested in farming. They are moving to the cities. Farmer is also complaining. First, they are not available. And if available, the wages are high. They have been increasing quite rapidly. And male workers move to the towns, the cities. And so in many cases, the agriculture work is left to the women workers. And so the agriculture, we see that there is an increasing feminization of agriculture. So we have to invest and invent devices which are more favorable or easy to be operated by women workers. Okay. In many countries, the big problem is that for farming, only the aged people are left. You look at Japan, it's hard to find young people to do agriculture. In Japan, I think the most of the agriculture is anyway a weekend agriculture. The people who work in industry or business factory, they take care of their farm over the weekend. So somehow we have to find ways of attracting the young and educated people to the farming in future. Thank you. Next one. Okay. Now, as I showed before, that electricity was being used for irrigation pumping and stationary operations like grinding and processing equipment. But now the major development is taking place in battery powered equipment. A small equipment is operated by battery. And even now we have a tractor also battery operated. So I think as it is in the automobiles, the cars, the same way it will happen to the agricultural equipment also. And I think that is definitely a very good development to reduce the air pollution for the environment sake. And if you look at the electricity consumption in agriculture has been quite low, but it has been increasing. I've tried to give some figures for Nepal has been so little, only 15 to 30 kilowatt per hectare per year. Bangladesh more, and then Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka from 400 to about 1000 kilowatt. Next. Now, I want to come to I gave you a slide in which mechanization of different operations, how it progresses from a high power and low skill to high skill operations. Based on all that, so we can say the level of mechanization varies significantly from crop to crop. So grain crops get mechanized very rapidly. Seeding is easy. Harvesting is by combine, whether it's a wheat, rice, or barley, or any of those crops, easy to harvest also. So vegetable crops don't get mechanized because the transplanting is still manual. It's very highly skilled operations. Their harvesting is also very, very skilled. So you will have that kind of variation. But even within the same crop, the level of mechanization varies. Let's take a rice. The transplanting is manual, mostly in Asia, while threshing of rice moved to threshers, mechanical threshers. So transplanting might be only 5 to 10% mechanized, while threshing is almost 80 to 100%, depending from country to country. Okay. Now, another variation is that within one big country, the level of mechanization from one region to another varies very, very significantly. Like case of India, if you take Punjab and Haryana, highly mechanized. And then you go to Assam, Bengal, Orissa, very low level of mechanization compared to these. So there is no one set rule of mechanization level for different crops, for different parts of even for the same country. Next. To give you an example, this table I don't expect anybody to read because there are so many numbers. But what it's trying to do is tell, next one, can you show the next slide? Yeah, this gives you what are all those numbers represent. So go back to the slide, please, previous one. Yeah, if I take India, and you take from animal power, okay, and I put it that the land preparation 20%, okay, sowing 20%, threshing 10%, transport 30% using animal. While engines and petrol engines there, you see the irrigation from engines is 35 to 40%, threshing 15%, okay, and then spraying, okay, and then you'll go to irrigation. Irrigation in India, you'll find the electric motors 45 to 50% and threshing 10%, okay. But the same threshing you'll find goes to the four-wheel tractors will be 20%, okay, and transport of by four-wheel tractors almost 60%, okay, the tractors transport. So you see the variation on you take an operation or you take a power source. So different. So I've tried to do it for countries, and this is what this project, Kalita, I was understanding that you were trying to find out what is the level of mechanization of different operations. So this was the situation, again collected through the a network of countries in Asia under the scheme, which is a mechanization scheme of UN ESCAP. So I was the consultant, and most of this information was collected by my students who are head of mechanization in many countries. Okay, next one. Next. Yeah. Now, because of the farm is very small, majority of farmers are small farmers. They do not own equipment, but they can rent, they can hire. So the most popular pattern of mechanization is through custom hire services. And I listed here the major operations. 4WT represent a 2-axle tractor. Doesn't mean a 4-wheel drive. It's 2 axles, okay? And a 2WT is a single axle tractor, which is a power tiller. So the transportation in most of the countries using a tractor or a power tiller is very, very popular. It's everywhere. And animal carts are still quite popular in Nepal, India, and Cambodia, I saw. Milling, as I explained before, engines and motors are used in all countries for milling operations. Water pumping uses engines, electric motors, and also these power tillers, 2-wheel tractor. Their engine is used for water pumping, and it's popular in all countries. Threshing of wheat. Most of the threshers are tractor PTO driven. India, Pakistan, Nepal, very, very popular. Threshing of rice is from both 4-wheel tractor and a power tillers in all countries. The harvesting of wheat, now combined harvesters have become quite popular in countries, India, Pakistan, even Nepal it has come. And Thailand is for rice. Next one, yeah. Can you go to next? Yeah, harvesting continues with the combined harvesters in India, quite popular. Thailand, Sri Lanka. Thailand is very unique. It makes its own combines, locally manufactured and very low cost. They have harvesting season of one of their crop is during the rainy season. So they make very light combines for the muddy field conditions. Tillage, the dry tillage in all countries normally done with the tractors, and wet tillage in all countries is still popular with the power tillers, 2-wheel tractors. As a matter of fact, the 2-wheel tractors did not become very popular for dry tillage because of the vibration problem, and is very tiring for an operator to operate in a dry field holding the handle of a power tiller. Land leveling with the laser levelers has become very, very popular in India, Pakistan. And interestingly, IRRI, International Rice Research Institute, introduced in Cambodia, has become very popular too. The seeding is done using 4-wheel tractor seed drills. India, Pakistan, very common. As a matter of fact, it's now growing everywhere. The transplanting is still mostly manual. Though in countries like Japan and Korea and Taiwan, transplanting is all done by machines. But if you look at for developing countries, it is still take time to catch up. It's been introduced in Bangladesh also. India has a manufacturer also and introducing. Maize shelling, very popular. I think the mechanical shellers. Harvesting of sugarcane, we have a now harvester produced in India also. It has been to some extent in Thailand from harvesters imported from Australia, like that. So we are moving mechanization from custom hire services. So here people pay for the amount of work done. So either it's on an area basis or a quantity basis. And as a matter of fact, this way we are able to use the equipment for much longer hours. So it's a much more economical use of equipment. So even the farmers who own these equipment are also renting out. As a matter of fact, that's where it started. The big farmers originally, big landlords had a lot of problem with the status. They will not rent out their tractors to others people. But when Green Revolution came, the yields increased, production increased, the farmers' income increased. The middle-sized farmers also started to buy tractors. And they started to rent out to the neighbors, not only neighbor in their village, but also in the neighboring villages. And so now it's the farmers who are renting out to other farmers. And at present, most of the big tractor manufacturers are also have started these custom hiring services. And they have created state level organizations to provide this custom hire services. So with the access of internet everywhere, with the mobile phones, smartphones, you are able to book a service required by you for any field operation with this custom hire service organization, and they will deliver that equipment, do your work, and then you make a payment. And I think this is catching up, and it is really making the mechanization accessible to everybody, irrespective of size of the farm. The one problem on small farmers is that many of their small plots do not have an easy access to the big equipment. And I think with the time, it's improving. And wherever we have a consolidation of holdings, where number of small plots scattered all over the village are put at one place for a farmer, then it gives you a bigger size of plot and also provides access, because this consolidation of holdings process provides for the access roads. Next. Okay, now, so with that, I come to a little bit about the production and imports. Now, Asia as the biggest population, of course, biggest in agriculture sector as overall. So it is also the largest market in terms of agriculture machinery sales. In 2012, we estimated that total industry was about $120 billion. And China alone accounted for $50 billion of that. And India was estimated to be roughly 15 billion. And so four-wheel tractors, 2-axle, are mainly produced in India, China, Japan, Korea, and Pakistan in Asia. Other countries are mostly importing tractors from these countries or even from outside the region. Two-wheel tractors, the power tillers, are mainly produced in China, Japan, Korea, Thailand, India, Philippines, Indonesia, and Vietnam. So you can see that Asia is producing tractors, both four-wheel and two-wheel tractors in large quantities. Next one. And if you look at the combined harvesters, we are still mainly produced in Japan, China, India, and Korea. Thailand, I mentioned before, producing locally made track type combines to harvest from wet fields. Other countries will be importing from them, and some even from outside. Interestingly, China produces a very large number of combines, but the custom hire operators in China import combines from Japan. They are more reliable, have a longer life, and less breakdowns. So quality is very important in manufacturing. So, and especially for custom hiring services, because you want to have a longer season. Like part of North India, there is a village in Haryana where one village has 600 combines, and these combine operators travel up to Gujarat. They go almost 1,000 kilometers and start, because Gujarat has an early harvest season for wheat crop and barley and that. And then they move up north slowly through Madhya Pradesh and UP and then Haryana, Punjab, like that. And that way they increase their operating season and make better returns on their investment using these combines. And then the same way they do in the rice harvesting season. Rice combines in South also becoming quite popular in India. Most countries are producing engines, petrol and diesel and electric motors, except the small countries like Laos, Cambodia, Nepal, Fiji, and Papua New Guinea. They are not producing, but they are also thinking in a way, starting. But most countries are producing implements and equipment which are attached to four-wheel or a power tiller. And they are mostly also producing water pumps and threshers, okay? But they easy to import from the neighboring countries and even from outside. Next one. Well, I put findings in the dark word, and the recommendations I left lighter because I'm not very sure whether recommendations are so confirmed. Okay, so AP region, as we said, Asia Pacific region has made a great progress over these 6-7 decades, especially in far power situation, which used to be 90% from animal sources. Animate is human and animal power, and now most of it 60% from mechanical sources. 4 main sources of mechanical power: 4-wheel and tractors and 2-wheel tractors are the main sources. For tillage, for transportation, water pumping and threshing. 4-wheel and 2-wheel tractors are for dry tillage, transportation, planting and seeding. Electric motor diesel engines for irrigation, as I explained before, and post-harvest stationary operations, and self-propelled combines, combine harvester for grain harvesting, and transplanters for rice and vegetable crops. Like that. Next. We have all found that there is a labor shortage during peak periods, and that's why these operations get mechanized first. And also said that labor is getting older and proportion of female labor is increasing. So we have to work on more labor saving and ergonomically appropriate equipment, especially to facilitate the work by women and elderly agriculture workers. All developing countries, the percentage of labor in agriculture is very high compared to the contribution of agriculture sector to GDP. And that's why you have a lower incomes of farmers compared to workers in other sectors. Mechanization does help increasing the yield and by timely conduct of operations, efficient placement of all the inputs, and decreasing drudgery. So government should really promote activities and create policies to favor mechanization for growth of agriculture, and as well as improve the income of agricultural workers. Next. Asia Pacific region has the largest area under irrigation. Use of electric motors and diesel pumps has increased significantly, and it will continue to increase. Okay, so I think there has to be a more investment in irrigation infrastructure, and we have to move to the more efficient irrigation systems of micro irrigation, drip irrigation, and fertigation. As I said before, the mechanization first was adopted by larger farmers, followed by the medium scale farmers, and these owners of these tractors and other equipment, they started renting out to the other smaller farmers. So the mechanization has become available to everyone, and especially through the rental services, custom hire services, now mechanization is accessible to almost everyone. Next. Well, I have said that we need governments to have favorable policies for both expanding the manufacturing sector. Most of the simple tools are produced locally, but I think there is a problem with the quality of the machines. Now, in many countries, we are making a mistake of subsidizing a lot of equipment for a longer period. As a matter of fact, the equipment should be subsidized only for the introduction purposes. Once the farmer is familiar and they know the value of it, merit of its use, advantages of its use, we should pull out the subsidy. Because subsidy is used by only few manufacturers, and once they have a guaranteed market, they compromise on quality. So I think we have to be very careful with the subsidies systems. In future, I think we have to work more on reducing the energy consumption of all machines, whatever we are using. No, we have to promote equipment like no-till drills, reduce the tillage practices, which are very high energy consumption. So we should promote conservation agriculture. Governments are providing support for R&D, but I think they need to provide even more. But important thing is human resource development. Although agricultural engineering departments are there, so they are training the engineers, but those engineers are really not operating the equipment at the field level. So there's a lot more need to train people at the working level, at the farm level. And this is definitely a big challenge. Next one. Well, again, I think this is a very familiar, the business and enterprise friendly policies, laws, regulations, all for infrastructure, which encourage commercial activity and entrepreneurship in farming, especially input supply, processing, marketing. Markets are still a major hurdle as far as farmers are concerned. And mandis are not very much mechanized yet. And there is a lot of work to be done there. In Asia, at least, we have a network in mechanization called Center for Sustainable Agriculture Mechanization, CSAM. Its office is in Beijing. It's under United Nations ESCAP, Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific, located in Bangkok. And under CSAM, we have a Asia Pacific Network for Testing Agriculture Machinery, NTAM, which I closely associated with. So we have a regional cooperation, and I think similar cooperations are needed in a continent like Africa. And this is extremely useful cooperation for the information sharing, we can harmonize the standards, so making imports easier from one country to another. Next one. Well, I think I've come to the last slide. The sustainable agriculture mechanization provide a very important input for sustainable production intensification, which is the objective of agriculture systems everywhere. It helps in environment-friendly agriculture management, and it helps optimize the use of farm inputs. Like by drip irrigation, we reduce the amount of water used, fertigation, reduce the amount of fertilizer used, and all that. And the seed drills will put the right amount of seed at the right place, all these. So I think with this, I like to thank everybody for patience. Thank you. Next one. Okay. Thank you. I'm open to questions if